Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the old grimoires to look at a figure who completely shatters, and I mean literally shatters, every pop culture stereotype you've ever seen about Western demonology. We are talking about Vassago. He's this absolutely fascinating anomaly tucked away in ancient texts. Forget the pea soup, the spinning heads, the horror movies, the whole shebang. We're looking at a historical entity whose entire existence revolves around something completely different. Actually, scratch the horror tropes entirely. He's far more like a supernatural study buddy. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our scholarly roadmap. We'll start with the paradox of Vassago, trace his origins in the Ars Goetia, look at the power of prophecy, discuss the theological problem he created, touch on modern magic and psychology, and finally, look at the danger of knowing. Section 1, the paradox of Vassago, a prince of revelation. So usually when we think of demons, we think of temptation, destruction, or corruption, right? But just listen to how he's described in the 17th century texts. Quote, "He declareth things past and to come, and discovereth all things hid or lost." That is a direct quote from the Ars Goetia. Think about that for a second. This fundamentally beneficial nature, finding what is lost, revealing the truth. It makes him an incredibly unique entity within the dark and honestly, often terrifying traditions of these medieval and Renaissance grimoires. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast in how he actually manifests. Your standard Goetic demons, they usually show up in these terrifying, monstrous hybrid forms, totally obsessed with destruction. But Vassago, he is historically documented as appearing with a very noble, human bearing. He's approachable, dressed more like a scholar or a prince. He's entirely focused on communication and truth. It's like he's less of a monster and more of a supernatural professor of hidden secrets. Section 2, Origins in the Ars Goetia, tracing the texts. Vassago's lore wasn't just invented overnight, It spread and evolved as a living textual tradition. We start with early, unrecorded traces in classical antiquity, and then move to 1583 with Johann Weier's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. By the 17th century, he's firmly established in the Ars Goetia, which is part of the famous Lesser Key of Solomon. But what's truly fascinating is how different manuscripts treated him. The Sloane manuscripts over in the British Library, for example, they heavily emphasized his prophetic abilities above everything else. It really shows how local magical practices actively influenced the text over time, long before we reached our modern psychological era. And then there's this number, 26. In the catalog of 72 demons, Vassago is specifically identified as the third spirit, and he commands precisely 26 legions of spirits. Now, in medieval and Renaissance magical thinking, this wasn't just some random detail. This numerical positioning connected deeply to broader numerological traditions of the time. It reinforced his specific scholarly status and his unique authority within the esoteric hierarchy. Section 3, the power of prophecy, navigating time. Historical illustrations often surround Vassago with specific, really intriguing symbols. A single eye radiating light, crystal balls, astrolabes. These all reflect an absolute mastery over temporal mysteries. While other spirits in the ecosystem, like Buer or Paimon, grant knowledge, their focus is mostly on earthly healing or academic learning. Vassago, he specializes strictly in temporal revelation. He's all about piercing the veil of time to uncover secrets that are completely beyond normal human perception. Let's move to and see how this builds across the dimensions of time. Because for Vassago, time isn't just a straight line you ride along. It's a completely navigable dimension. It's a three-step process. First, he accesses the past to reveal historical truths. Second, he clarifies the present, literally finding lost objects or hidden information. And third, he reveals the future through prophecy. It's this highly sophisticated metaphysical framework where the past, present, and future are all equally accessible to him. So, how did people actually use this? Well, historically, his divination was used for personal guidance, which today translates to nuanced situational insights. Finding lost objects literally meant treasure hunting in the Middle Ages. I mean, they were basically using a demon as a metal detector. Today, modern practitioners adapt that for genealogical research or scientific inquiry. And temporal revelation? That went from claims of historical archaeological discoveries back in the day to what some modern researchers claim is assistance with complex data analysis. Talk about an evolution in practical application, right? Section 4, the theological problem, a benevolent demon. Now, this brings up a massive epistemological and ethical dilemma, a huge headache for medieval Christian scholasticism. Can a demon be truly beneficial without an ulterior motive? I mean, if these entities are inherently evil, how can they provide genuinely good, helpful knowledge? Are they secretly trying to corrupt the practitioner? Or is it possible for an infernal entity to just be neutral? The contrast here is absolutely fascinating. The traditional theological view argued that any demonic knowledge was inherently deceptive, that it was designed entirely to lead humans astray. But the Vassago anomaly defied this completely. He provided neutral or even beneficial revelation without any obvious soul bargaining. In fact, historical texts suggest that pacts with Vassago involved an intellectual exchange. You weren't selling your soul, you were offering your own study, your own contemplation, and your own academic achievements in exchange for his revelatory information. It was a trade of knowledge. Section 5, Modern Magic and Psychology, the Archetype. Today, in our contemporary digital age, the understanding of this entity has fundamentally shifted. Many modern practitioners don't view Vassago as a literal demon sitting down in hell. Instead, they view him as a psychological archetype that's a universal, symbolic pattern of thought or behavior. In this context, Vassago represents the human capacity for deep, intuitive knowledge. He's viewed more as an internal psychological tool, mirroring cross-cultural figures like the blind prophet Tiresias in Greek myth, or the Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi. It's really all about unlocking what's already inside our own consciousness. And this brilliantly illustrates how the practice itself has completely evolved. The classical ritual required consecrated circles, super complex geometric seals, and perfect timing aligned to the planetary hours of Mercury. Today, that elaborate ceremonial conjuration has evolved into modern techniques for accessing the unconscious. It's about mental state preparation, therapeutic application, and even integrating modern information technology. The focus has entirely shifted away from the ceremonial apparatus, right to the internal psychological state of the practitioner. Section 6, The Danger of Knowing. Modern Precautions. So the crucial point is that delving into the unknown always has consequences. Even the old grimoires contained explicit warnings, and today, those warnings are deeply practical for anyone seeking out hidden knowledge. We're talking about the very real risk of severe information overload in our digital age, and the immense difficulty of distinguishing a genuine revelation from just your own psychological projections. There are real mental health concerns regarding blurred realities here, and a massive trap of becoming overly dependent on this kind of spiritual guidance. The danger here isn't some Hollywood-style demonic possession, it's losing your grip on practical everyday reality. The absolute necessity of practical grounding and healthy skepticism cannot be overstated. Which brings us to our final big question for this explainer. Is Vassago an external spiritual entity, a real prince of the Ars Goetia, or is he simply a reflection of our own untapped unconscious knowledge? Whether you view him as a wild historical curiosity or a profound psychological tool, this anomaly forces us to ponder the true source of human intuition and the enduring mysteries of consciousness itself. It's a fascinating look at the lengths we will go to uncover the truth. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you know.